And congratulations, Dr. Rajapatrana. It's wonderful to see a piece of writing by you. Again, I have a question for the former president and one to Dr. Rajapatrana. Mr. President, I think we are seeing trade and investment policies blur the lines with national security policies and certain other policies that have nothing to do with trade and investment. For example, national security, we have Singapore, Australia, Canada introducing national security clauses into their investment policies. Now we see Trump, even on the trade tariff issue, hitting back at the Bolsonaro trial, saying, I will introduce more tariffs if you don't lift this trial, nothing to do with trade. So my question to you is, and maybe even Dr. Rajapatrana, is how do you see that playing out, where there are all these new considerations, and how Sri Lanka should think about it, because these are things that will increasingly come to us as well. Dr. Rajapatrana, my question to you is, because in the introduction to the book you say that it's also beyond economics, that you look at history, ideology and so on. Yeah. Why do you think that in Sri Lankan society we seem to have this, we are lacking this consensus, or there's an unfinished consensus around whether globalization has worked for us or not, and whether we like it or not? Because we have these some sectors where we like it, some instances where we go away from it. So that's my question to you. Thank you.
President?
You know, Trump's remarks on Bolsonaro is such that there's such a big backlash that if the court doesn't convict him, people might even go and surround the court. That's all that has happened. Yeah. That's. I mean, you're playing. You just because you make a statement here, it doesn't mean that politics is going to turn out that way. Now it is. The cry is to convict him. So he's losing his chance of a fair trial. All because President Trump went and intervened. National security means, when you put it into your investment clause, it means you are not having Chinese coming in. Now for Singapore, it is not a major problem, because Singapore is a big investor in China, about 30 billion, and they are one of the big guys who are driving this whole West China chunking. And what America forgets is, at the end of the day, the vast majority in Singapore is Chinese. Canada and all are doing that to keep the Chinese out. But China is coming through other areas. I mean, if they can't invest in Canada, they will invest elsewhere. In Indonesia or Malaysia or Sri Lanka or some other places. And remember, the only other option to the Suez Canal is the belt. No one else has produced anything else. You can't see India, Middle East, Israel one is off now. And after the bombing of Iran, that is out. So you're just taking ad hoc decisions. And Chinese are waiting and then looking at what they have to do. This is what happened now even with the tariffs. Chinese waited for them to walk into a trap. So it is becoming, they are using this as political. It's not only this. Now look at EU. When Russia went into Ukraine, what did they do? They froze all the assets of Russians and the Russian government in the European Union. And now they are talking of confiscating it. You can take over the assets, but you must be declared an enemy state. No one has declared Russia enemy state. So as a result, what's happened is people are moving their money out of London into Dubai. They are frightened. They don't want to keep it in, but you have broken it. So UK has lost out by leaving the EU, and secondly by by threatening to take over the assets of UK. Same with EU. So people are moving out. But you're breaking the rules. Okay, then declare it enemy state and take it. And no problem. But we are being asked to follow one set of rules and they follow another.
Dr. Rajapatrana, could you
Yeah, to
respond
answer
on-
you, yeah.
Yes, he asked about why do you think there's unfinished conversation whether globalization has worked or not on Sri Lanka, since in your book you have mentioned it's beyond, a little bit beyond economics.
Yeah, actually, I was very convinced when we started reading and working on it that the economics itself will not be able to help us out, because you need a context, and the context comes from doing not only economics, but history and other things that I talk about, including, how the system has worked for us. Economic analysis is good. I mean, we can understand the thing, but it is not necessarily sufficient. So that's why I said we should look at history, for example, very important. Provide a context in which globalization takes place, because it's a new experience for us living far away in a small country. It's really, it's not just enough to talk about economics there, because there are enough that have been spoken about economics. It is one of the very advanced things, but other things have not come in. History, the context that is prepared, and some of the people who reviewed which liked the idea that I had gone outside the economics thing only. Very good economists have told me that, and so I feel quite safe saying those things. So why not? Right? We should get the best possible information to make decisions. And if it means going beyond the economic constraint, so be it.
Dr. Rajapatrana, a quick interruption. So in your book, does it shed light on Sri Lanka's context, that on the journey on globalization, on convincing people or people embracing it, whether how do they respond to it in terms of policy and in terms of public perception? What is your reading, and has it been discussed in your book with more empirical evidence?
Yeah, the book is about Sri Lanka, in the sense that we look at Sri Lanka as an example to see what globalization will do to us. Now, if there are some people who say it is going to hurt poor countries like us, and other more thorough economists who do a lot of research find that is not the case. What we find in our book also, there is no such evidence to say that globalization will get us in trouble. We can do what we have been doing always. So good policy, what we are lacking right now is good policies to increase the GDP growth rate. We have done the part of stabilization, and now we are in a more difficult world for us. How to get our economy growth rate up?
Thank you.
Can I say one thing?
Yes.
I read the book. One thing I found which struck me was that after reading your book, in Sri Lankan government, all the advisors we got starting from about Caldor, all from UK.
Yes.
But at that time, UK was declining.
Yeah.
Without an empire.
Yeah.
Even after they joined the EU, it was in decline. It's only Margaret Thatcher and Keith Joseph who put it. So we also went down with them.
Yeah.
But the East Asians and Southeast Asians, they got the American help.
Yeah.
They got from Harvard, places like that. I have met Wickremesinghe, who was advising the Singapore, the Dutch guy.
Yeah.
And they are very, very sharp.
Yeah.
And they got from Harvard, we got from Sussex School of Development, and some funny creatures that come out of that. No?
I think we have another question from the front row.
So my question is to President Wickremesinghe. I think you are coming close to 50 years in politics. Can you, because Dr. Rajapatrana's book is Policy Challenges of Globalization in Sri Lanka, and I'd like you to weigh in on the Sri Lankan context. Has politics in Sri Lanka changed with regard to the market system and embracing globalization? Because even if you consider the current NPP government, who historically were JVP, extreme leftists, that's not the way they are governing here. And do you think that there is a better context today to do these kind of reforms that we need to do?
Politics in Sri Lanka has not changed. All the political parties generally duck the question. And they go to elections on what you're against, not what you're for. Or as Lee Kuan Yew said, auctioning non-existent resources. Now, at the last election, we had an agreement with the IMF, with the Official Creditors Committee, and with the bondholders. But what did you go to elections? What did the other parties say? One party said, we will renegotiate this with the IMF. Other party said, we are going to make amendments to this. What are they going to do? Now, how are they going to implement that? That's all. So, unless Sri Lanka politics change, where you can take an issue and say, this is what you have to do, running on all this, from 56 onwards, running on negative campaigns are not going to work. So we are still going to be in the same mess.
So, sir, if I was just to follow up on that, I mean, we have always had an anti-trade bias in our policy. Globalization is trading more in people, in services, in goods. Do you still think that trade is looked at negatively in Sri Lanka, in the current political context?
From what I can see, trade is being looked negatively. If you look at the agreements we had with India on trade, all have been not been implemented. Yeah. That's the biggest market we have. Then we have the Singapore trade agreement, Thai trade agreement. It's not been. So we have this bias against trade, partly by the private sector who don't want them to come in, so that their own spheres of profit making gets affected. Partly as a result of the thinking, especially among the left and others. It's surprising, though China changed and Vietnam changed, our left parties, some of them, some thinkers didn't change. So those are the issues we have.
So, President, in that sense, since you mentioned our politics haven't changed, so even our politics have successfully defeated the globalization in that sense, because we really haven't changed. Is that what you...
No. We are now grappling with. World is, the globalization is there, world is going, and we are getting left behind. Why is it that Vietnam, which was so far behind us in 1990, the industries minister came to Sri Lanka and asked me as industries minister, how do we get foreign exchange? No, they are going ahead. Not only them, Cambodia is going ahead. Bangladesh is going ahead. So we are grappling with this issue. We are not getting anywhere. Now we have this main issue of how to deal with the US. We are still grappling with it. We have got 30%. You can't survive with 30%. They are going to ask for less. I hope they succeed. But otherwise... Now you have to realize one thing. We have never told the US. US is a member of the OCC. And US has signed on to the EFF and the time limits, which means they must help us now. In that game, they also have to, otherwise they are in breach of the agreement. They are preventing from us to repay the bondholders, and we must now tell the IMF, tell the bondholders to go to US and collect the money. Why are we just going and say, we'll buy Coca-Cola from you or we'll buy gas from you? Okay, you are in breach of this.
But can I...
Yes, Dr. Ivadan.
I don't think the economic policies are going to change very much, because they have no understanding from ITC from far away and looking at history to change the color of what they are going to do. It's they did a good job at the beginning, but about getting growth will not be available to them unless they are prepared to do things that we have talked about for a long time as economists. I don't see that. I saw somebody, I can't remember his name, saying, but we are going to apportion this party to do this thing, the other party to do some other thing. That's totally against the international trade that we know. That who are the people who are going to make public servants? Are they the ones who are going to make decisions what to produce or not to produce? That's going to be a disaster if they actually do it.
More questions from the audience? Yes, I'll come to you and then I'll go to Dr. Roshan. Yes, go ahead, Professor Samarajee.
Now, I think the effort here is to understand that the Sri Lankan public has to be, their attitudes have to change. I think you're writing the book partly for that. You're saying we have to talk about history, we have to go beyond economics and so on. Now our president, former president, has been talking about Antarganga, Dura and various things. I don't see that as having made a big impact, that discussion of history. I learnt about it from him, but has it made an impact on our public? My question is, that's the first part. The second part is, has this economic crisis educated our people in some fashion about economics and globalization, much more than words and opinion influencers have, that this particular incident has educated them? That's, I think, Mr. President, you've been in this business for a long time, so I think you know whether it has changed. You'll be able to compare.
Dr. Rajapatirana?
Can I just add?
Yes, please, Dr. Roshan.
Basically, in India, if you look at the Indian context, they had this massive crisis in 1991 and they've never gone back. And actually, because people still have that memory of what it was like pre-1991. So it's kind of the same, following up on what Rohan said. Have we learned from it, or are we going to learn in the future? So that's one question. The other one is, President Wickremesinghe, you talked about different countries like China, Vietnam, how they have completely changed their economic model. Is an authoritarian government necessary for that kind of change? And do democracies fail, democratically elected democracies fail in creating that change? Do we need to have kind of more authoritarian governments? Just a question.
No, I'm not talking about authoritarian government. It's your mindset. You must know in many countries their policies are fixed. They may define the margins, otherwise on personalities, but not here. But remember this matter. I'll tell you, keeping this aside. Why did we get into the mess? Keeping aside the two deficits which she has written on, we came to an arrangement with the IMF that we'll have a surplus in the primary budget.
Yeah.
For that we had to increase the VAT, I think from 8 to 15, no?
15, yeah.
15.
18.
So we went along that. And then what happened? The private sector said, you must reduce the VAT. Private sector, and they were joined by the Vietmaga.
Yeah.
I refused. I said, you can't. So they went to Vietmaga and all, they agreed, went to Mr. Gotabaya Rajapaksa, who agreed to reduce it. That was our politics. He won. Within 2 months, he reduced it. And then within 2 years, we were out on queues, trying to get a can of diesel.
Yeah.
So this is what happened. And what happened in this city, I think a lot of people suffered. They suffered a lot. And they thought the system has failed them. That was one campaign that was run. It was a very, very confused state. But there is not only our electorate. Remember, the British, where democracy started, parliament was this thing. They thought by getting out of the EU, they'll have a better future. Now they are going down. So there are many countries like that at different times. The electorate, even if you look at US now, the last election was one on negative issues.
Yeah.
President Trump in 2022 was very unpopular now after the January 6th.
Yeah.
They were investigating him. In midterm, the Republicans couldn't win. And then all of a sudden he becomes. So this is a part of today's politics. Maybe because it is driven more by what you hold in your hand and not by what you read in the papers or what you hear on the TV or what you see on the TV or hear on the radio. It's the whole politics have changed, and then it's what you have here that counts.
Dr. Rajapathran, do you want to respond to Professor Samarajiva's question on people's...
The honest answer is I don't know. We have to write another book, say 10 years from now, to see what has happened. We don't know. But from what I see, what they are not doing, doesn't look as if they are going to go back to the thing that we are talking about, liberalizing trade and the things that, to me, the way I seen it, that worked for us. So without it, actually, we can't go very much forward.
I will open up for more questions, but I want to touch upon a point that you made on the negotiations with the tariffs. I think I heard it for the first time that already Americans have agreed on OCC. I mean, we knew, but in this context, with your experience, do you think, President, it's a good way on entering on these negotiations? I mean, President Trump is basically violating all the rules, as you said, like all the trade agreements which has been coming for years and years. Do you still think, since you have interacted and you have a temperature test on interacting with these policymakers, do you think it could have been actually something that we should have told them, or?
I think we should have taken it up. We haven't. We are looking at how to buy gas and all. Yeah. Okay, let's wish them all the luck, but I would have started my trading and my negotiation at that time, which would have been one of the points. Yeah. You are in the OCC, we have all agreed to this. And you are now telling me, don't send these things, so then how am I going to repay? I will certainly work with you to increase it, I also admit it. Why? But you're not like some other countries. You're part of the OCC, then that's where you should start.
Any more questions from the audience? Okay, yes, we have one question at this point. Yes, yes, Dr. Veerapal.
First of all, congratulations to Dr. Rajapathy. I'm also very pleased to have the opportunity to read more of your work. I have a question to both former President and Dr. Rajapathy. I mean, when we look at globalization, whether, we're talking about current, what is happening now, but what prompted Americans, 52% of that population, to vote for a change? Because even before elections, you could see that, President Donald Trump was going to take a more sort of a protectionist view on the US economy. The manufacturing sector, the blue-collar workers were losing jobs to what they perceived to be cheaper imports from China. Even to some extent, the UK decision to move out of EU is also a response to some of, pressures for de-link from regional integration in source. So it's not only a story that's unique to us here. So in terms of the policy context, I think what we have always found it very difficult is, technocrats can sit around and say, yes, globalization is good for these, but how do we convince the vast majority of our voters to go along with that, and what are the sort of benefits that can be showcased to those who do lose out? I mean, there are losers of globalization. So in terms of Sri Lanka also, as we go from this crisis and a new government, a new approach, how can we bring 51+% of the population along with us? And again, I would ask the former president also, what would be the specific proposals to put on the table to tackle that issue? Because we go back and forth, largely because populations are not convinced that this is delivering what they want. I mean, day-to-day improvements in their living standards.
Dr. Rajapatrana, do you want to
but mostly
respond?
the politics is sort of bed and butter question here. People are saying when they have election, what are they giving us always? That is the thing. Not whether there is a good democracy or people are free to, no. What can we get? I mean, very good, sensible people ask this question. So we go back to Lee Kuan Yew's definition of non-existing resources. What is that game? But actually, I don't see whether this government is going to or is capable of putting it out and saying, this is what works, this is what we shall do. The first 100 days and what they have done with the rest has been good. So let's hope that they get the idea to really follow economic reforms that are needed, and to somebody to explain what the reforms are, how it will benefit them. Nobody has done that to date.
President, you want to respond? How do we convince a vast majority, while there may be losers in the in globalization, how politics should respond, and how should we convince them?
Well, first question was on US. I think the Democrat Biden failed. In my view, I met him in 2023. I had known him earlier. You could see he was in decline. And no one talked of getting ready for the post-manufacturing age. China has done that. Doesn't have multi-party democracy. No one there talked of it. A lot of people are getting affected. So Trump capitalized on that. Sri Lanka, people suffered. So one was they blamed the existing politicians for it, on both sides. That worked to the advantage of the NPP. Secondly, the other sides didn't give answers. They were giving promises, we'll redo it. We added about 1 million people onto the tax net that are left out. So all of them didn't go work, happily to go and vote. And they were promised now, and the threshold of this has been raised, but how are you getting the funds? You are not getting the funds, you are compressing your expenditure. So that itself is affecting the workings of the economy. Then the other one they couldn't answer was that they were only dealing with corruption. When I signed the EFF, corruption was a big issue. And I agreed I said that we need a new Anti-Corruption Act, and Minister Vijayadasa Rajapaksa drafting it. So he brought that. It's under this that all of them are now functioning, not any other. Secondly, I didn't stop any cases that had been filed earlier when we were in government. Thirdly, I allowed a minister in the government to be arrested. First time in Sri Lankan history. And then I got the governance diagnostic done by the IMF. That has still to be implemented. That's all, but we have all the cases of some poor public servants, I don't know, the guys, when the country was in a crisis and when the political leaders were running away and our democracy could even break down, today we are hammering, only the public servants are there. I know many of them didn't agree with me and say they did not vote for me, but they worked. If they did not work, we would not have been able to have pulled this country through. All I had were the public servants. No one else. So when I see what is going on, okay, some of them certainly, all those who are guilty of corruption, you should, but I feel some of them are, from what I read, there will be a question mark or some of the others. Now if you are not going to protect your public servants, how are you going to run the country? You won't have economy very soon.
Any more questions? But till we get more questions, I want to ask, since you mentioned about some of the work that you did during your 2 years period at office, one area that is closer to us is state-owned enterprises, which Advocata Institute and our team has worked. Did you lose enthusiasm on reforming it towards the latter part, if I may ask? Because that was one, and of course my chairman was in the committee.
Yeah.
While it's part of globalization and opening for investment, in 2 years we could not do any, I mean, there were governance structures and agree that there was a holding company recommended at the IMF governance report. Did you get scared that because of the elections that you had to slow it down, or whether there was vested interest? I'll ask it very straightforward.
No, nothing. The SOE reforms are there. First year we were not focusing on, we had to get the growth going. And then, of course, there's a committee. And the members of the committee insisted that they follow all the proper steps. You know that. I used to push them, but they said, no, we don't want questions coming up later and for us to be locked up. So they followed all the things. Everything was ready to go, and there were, in fact, by the time we came to about July or so, there were offers. But at that stage, I said, elections is coming, don't go and have a transaction. They'll say that someone benefited. So leave it, otherwise it could have been finished off by end of December. No, it was to follow the proper path. And there were many discussions with them. There has never been a delay, but okay, if this is what they want, even the IMF said, follow what the committee says. So it takes time, because you have to go through everything. There were so many things missing. The committee wanted to get all the papers together. That alone takes you a fairly long time.
Any questions? I have few more. I think there's a young audience. Do you have any questions on globalization, on challenges? Okay. Yes.
Hello, Dr. Rajapatra, question for you. I think at least that one big factor with regards to our attitude towards globalization as a country is that people see this sense of disparity between industries when it comes to the income of globalization. Export-led industries or services, they kind of do far better than lower-skilled labor-led industries. So do you think, with regards to solving this issue, social cushioning policies are the way to go? Whereas like human capital investments or training, targeted transfers, things like that are the way to go? Or is there another way to tackle this issue?
Whether there is globalization or not, people have to live. The government has to provide. For example, at the end of the last program that we had, people were having great difficulties. Getting milk, food, setting in queues, and all that. So we avoiding that is the first thing we can do, right? The thing is that also we have to relearn to use markets. The markets are good. There are some exceptions. But that if we follow those things that we have did in the past, we'll be okay. They don't have to be very special interventions into the system to help people. I mean, at that time of the crisis, it was not so much economics that we talked about, that we have to save the people first.
I always tell the people, on the crisis, of course, I must thank Advocata and him. We had discussed it before I even became Prime Minister.
Yeah.
We spent COVID discussing it. I think I came to office also. What to do? So what had to be done, I think we met Mutsosa. What had to be done could be left to them, and then they had to come back with details. We were ready for that.
Yeah.
We had a group, I just put them in with the senior officials like the governor and Siriwardena. And then it just kept rolling along here. Anushka was there, 3-4 of them. We knew what we were going to do, so we had no problem on that, and they had to come back with it. How old are you?
I'm 20. But
20?
Yeah.
Where do you stay?
I live in Colombo. I'm working with Advocata right now. But
Advocata. You have electricity there?
Yeah.
You have water there?
Yeah.
When we came to power in 1977, How much is the country electricity? 10% or 15%?
Yeah, very little.
Very little.
Yeah.
I was lucky, I lived down 5th lane, every house had a telephone.
Yeah.
But in most places in my constituency, the village didn't have a telephone.
Yeah.
And villagers without telephones. Look at what the city, how many houses had proper roofs? Charita is one of those who worked on it. We opened out the economy. We got tourists in. We sent people out. Today, how many? The country didn't have phones. Now we have more phones than anything else. Some of you carry 2 or 3. You speak to one girlfriend on one end, you speak to the other girlfriend on the other. That is what happened. You know, these 3-wheelers we brought in. The corrupt politicians brought in the 3-wheelers.
Yeah.
We
and now they are
opened up.
complaining.
Huh?
And now they are complaining.
And they are complaining. The guys who are running the 3-wheelers are complaining. The vehicles that came in. I remember in the youth council, he opened a class to train people to repair air conditioners in cars, because until then there were no air conditioners in cars.
Yeah, right.
So that is how this country changed, and that's because you opened out the economy. And if you had gone faster, we could have done. We can do far more. We didn't.
So on that note, President, now in globalization and also opening up, I think Professor Samarajee also touched upon it, there are a few phases. Do you think like when we opened up in 1977, the rest of it wasn't like the labor side reforms, it wasn't really, the ecosystem wasn't supporting enough to get the growth, because we opened up early, but now we are falling behind and the rest is...
The labor system was there, 2 zones were the best. We didn't go to change the labor law much. We had the 2 of the best things. It's a question of, you must have labor laws. You can't be changing the labor laws. People want the labor laws changed, bosses. But then they must bring all the money abroad back also. So it runs both ways. The labor laws, it's not that. You see how it ran.
But do you
Question
still
of giving
think...
people inspiration and telling them to go. Once you give them the opportunity to make money, they will go ahead. I remember a case of one of my constituents who came to me. He had taken a housing loan from the housing ministry and he had not been able to repay it, and he wanted time. So I asked him, I knew the man. I said, I have been to your place, I have not seen a new house. He said, no sir, I took the money, I have got sewing machines and I am supplying cut pieces to some company. That's how, when they found ways of getting money. So he used a soft loan from the housing ministry. People went around, they made money, good or bad, you have to allow them to do it.
Any more questions? We have Professor Kolabage. Can we have a microphone over here? Yes.
Yes, I would like to congratulate Dr. Sarath Rajapatran for his book. It's a timely problem, time. And he's focusing on policy challenges. I think in the case of Sri Lanka, it's a question of how to deal with so many problems. One is Sri Lanka is caught in technology backwardness, and Sri Lanka caught in lower middle income country. It's a middle income trap, because we were elevated to middle income status way back in 1997, and we attained upper middle income status just before the COVID crisis, and later we came down again. So I think the major problem is technology backwardness. If you compare countries like South Korea, they have achieved massive technology development, and President is aware that National Science Foundation was set up for this particular purpose. But unfortunately, we are handicapped in technology advancement, and we are living in a world of AI now, and artificial intelligence. And this is not a question, but this is a comment. And my second comment is on macroeconomic policies. Of course, we can't talk about globalization without focusing on macroeconomic policies, particularly exchange rate management, monetary policy, and also fiscal policy. So these things should go hand in hand with globalization. So unfortunately, in Sri Lanka, exchange rate management is not very conducive to trade growth, export growth. So we can't just focus on tariffs or trade liberalization, but we have to focus on monetary policy as well, monetary policy and fiscal policy. That's my comment. This is not a question, but it's a comment.
Do you have
Thank
a response?
Yeah, I have a question. Is that I want to ask myself the question, isn't it time for another trade liberalization? Aren't we in time to do another trade liberalization?
We had the national tariff policy which should have come into place on 1st of January, which had the 4 bans.
Yeah.
If you had that in place, we're in a better position to negotiate with US.
Okay. Any more questions? Yes, we have one more question.
I was wondering whether I misheard when President Wickremesinghe said we don't need changes in labor laws. I'm asking 2 questions there. One is TEVA doesn't work.
Yeah, not TEVA.
TEVA doesn't work, and we proposed in 2022 that it be replaced with an unemployment insurance fund scheme. And the other is the desperate need that we have for bankruptcy legislation, which is sort of then indirectly affects labor. Why couldn't we get these things done in the last 2 years? And again, now I can remember trying to get this nighttime work rule changed back in 2003 or 2003, when we were bringing the BPO guys in. And now finally, yesterday or day before, I saw that it had been changed. I mean, maybe you created the groundwork for that and these people just implemented it. But I mean, one positive thing that I've seen in the last little while is that one, saying night shifts are allowed. I'd like your comments, sir.
To add to that, that's what I meant by the labor. I was planning to come for that, and also on rationalizing on the leave policy. I think Murtaza went viral on TikTok suggesting to rationalize the leave policy. I mean, is there a way that you get a better quota and you can pick, you can plan better, or like you can claim for the leaves that you haven't taken? That's what we meant, I think, on the...
No, all that were down, but initially we had other things to focus on. And the question was not so much leave, but to get the people back into work or to give them income. But on the unemployment insurance, yes, we are for it. We were studying that unemployment insurance. And the other one you mentioned was what? Bankruptcy. No, Chapter 11 was what we wanted to bring in, Chapter 11, but we just we had to do the main laws, like that Public Debt Act and all. Those should have followed. Chapter 11, everything. We need Chapter 11 because if you look at this, the protest against on Parat execution, some have failed, it has to go, but on Chapter 11 you could have given them another chance, some of the other areas.
We have a few more minutes. I also have another list of questions, but before that, are there any questions from the audience? Maybe we can come back. I want to slowly pivot back on the globalization and on also the recent comments that you have made. So, on opening up to the world with this new sort of global order, because we have also applied for BRICS. I mean, we have shown our intention to join BRICS on one side. At the same time, you have mentioned now with a bipolar world, it seems that there are regional formation is also taking place. How should we think on those two aspects? Because countries like India, they are also in BRICS, but they also seems to be getting a better deal from the US at the same time. So countries like Sri Lanka, how should we look at in this formation in a globalized world?
First, look at what is available. That is India. Start off with that. Have agreement with Bangladesh. I always said do it with the ASEAN countries individually. Actually, Malaysia and Indonesia are waiting for it. Other is China. China was also waiting for one once India was done. We had to do India, we had to do China, we had to do Japan, because there is a deficit, and that's working in their favor. So we have to push these three countries to see how to reduce the deficit. Korea, to a certain extent, has taken labor, but there's possibility there. Secondly, we should be able to attract investment from those countries in here. We had discussed with the countries. They said what they can do, what should be done on the short term. But then if you are not prepared to go out, what do? You bargain for them and try and keep the benefits you have in EU. If necessary, we should try and get a bit more from the EU now. And, so you have to work this around. You have India, you have Japan, you have China to work with. Go for those.
Dr. Rajapatran, do you have any comments? Especially I would like to touch upon on the trade negotiations front, because in globalization, trade is important. Generally, when we go through your reading, you are more advocating for a more unilateral trade negotiation on one side. How do you see, because with the new geopolitical order, President Wickremesinghe is more in the view that we have to negotiate with Japan, China, Bangladesh, but at the same time, even our advisor, Professor Arthur Korola, has mentioned the importance of also on one side on the unilateral trade negotiation or trade liberalization. How do you see it on the context of globalization and also on the challenges for Sri Lanka in a globalized world?
Actually, the thing is that when you look at our history, we have done those things and we have succeeded. So why don't we look at history and say this succeeded for a particular reason? The timing was good, but unfortunately there were so many huge other projects taken like Mahaveli, should have of course been done, but it veered us away from really taking the full benefits of the liberalization. And we could not show like other countries that they succeeded, like we talked about Chile. Chile showed they liberalized, the first poor developing country to liberalize, and the benefits were there to see immediately. We took time, because I have a point, I don't know whether you'll agree with, there was a tussle between the economists and the lawyers.
No, I wouldn't say that. The issue was that there was a full breakdown of capital formation.
Yeah.
And though Mahaveli led to inflation, it created capital. Everyone started going back to being contractors, subcontractors, suppliers. We put that. The second one, by 82, we were coming out of that and we won the election, but then we got bogged down in the war from there onwards.
Yeah.
That's really, from 83 onwards, the war took our... Otherwise, we were getting ready to open up. There are so many plans President Jawardhan had. But from 83, we were just bogged down in the war. Then, of course, in 2003, they offered us, we got 4 billion from the aid consortium and $1 billion from the MCC. We had 5 billion, but we never used it.
Yeah. And MCC very sad because free money, absolutely free money.
Yeah, free money. Then the last time we had 600 million, we had this whole, we would have had the whole traffic control system for Colombo.
Yeah.
They said they worked out how much of time we are going to save. I was also this thing as to why they are trying to give us a traffic system, and then, but we said no. Then we got a high-speed train from Japan.
Yeah.
So we said no to that. We are like Vesanthar. Whatever comes, we give away.
Yes, Murtaza, there's a question from the front row.
So, both to Dr. Sarath Rajapatran and President Wickremesinghe, one element of globalization is movement of people. And if you remember when the Harvard Growth Lab worked on Sri Lanka and Professor Hausman's theory about tacit knowledge that it is in brains of people, one of the things that they showed us that there's about 8% of our population outside Sri Lanka. These are not the permanent immigrants. These are the people who have gone for employment. And they kind of worked out how many foreigners live in Sri Lanka, and it was like 0.1% or 0.2% of our population. Most global cities have a lot of people born elsewhere. I was speaking at some event yesterday also, and it was a Swiss chamber, and there were certain people complaining it's so difficult if you're a foreigner to get visas here, to stay here. They had to get yellow fever vaccines, etc. When you were in power, I think this has been flagged to you. What is the problem in liberalizing foreigners coming to Sri Lanka? Even this whole fracas about Israelis running things in Arugambe and, you know, the surfing place. I mean, why do we have this aversion against foreigners when we want to go to their countries, basically?
You know, if these rules were there at that time, Arahat Mahinda wouldn't have been able to come in. They said, Indian and chased him out. But leaving that aside, no, we want to do the digitalization and then open out after that. We had so many, but our main focus was just get the bankruptcy over, get the agreements in, and after that go for the rest of it.
We are about to wrap up. Are there any final questions before I give? Yes, we have one more question from Anushka.
I thought that it might be interesting to ask Dr. Rajapatran a question that is less on policy and more about personal and professional career. So Dr. Rajapatran, for you, when you think about how you thought about globalization, its role in trade, what was due for the Sri Lankan economy back then, when you were working with the World Bank and others, and when there was a different consensus around economic policies, and you compare that to how you feel now, also having been a presidential advisor on economic issues, now being more, perhaps more sensitive to issues beyond economics. If you were to contrast Dr. Rajapatran of those years to what you have reflected on now in the book and policy issues around globalization, is it the same? Are there differences? What should we expect in the book?
My point there would be that at every job that I did, I learned a lot. And I learned from a lot of people around. I was very, very lucky to work with the very good economists inside the World Bank and outside. And I learned a lot from them. And then there's the interest in working in small countries. I worked on a lot of countries, maybe about 30 countries when I was in the World Bank. I learned a lot from Indonesia, a lot of what they were doing. So there's a lot. I think the learning part is the one that I will emphasize. I don't think my views have changed very much. I think same old things work because they work. So it doesn't make a difference whether where I am, you know. Yeah. But I worked for 2 presidents also in the bargain. And learned a lot from there also.
Okay. With that, Dr. Rajapatran, any final thoughts on your book and also on that you would like to highlight on the challenges, the policy challenges for Sri Lanka with globalization? And then I would also like to give the opportunity to the President to speak his final remarks. Any final thoughts, Dr. Rajapatran?
We're going to do another book. He's the one who talked. The name of the book is, the title is going to be An Uncommon History of Sri Lanka, where we can talk about things that people didn't want to talk about.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Looking very much forward for that.
Yeah.
President Wickremesinghe, your final thoughts. If you were to advise the current policymakers, especially with the new geopolitics that is brewing up, what would you tell them? And if you were to negotiate, because I remember you had a masterstroke geopolitical, I would say, a gaming by having the Iranian president in Sri Lanka. At the same time, you negotiated with Israelis on some foreign employment opportunities. At the same time, you, in a way, stood for Palestine. At the same time, you had you had a debt restructuring which is going on with Japan in the center, and you said even the Americans signed for it. what's the secret, or do you have any magic recipe that how we should act in these developing geopolitical tensions?
First one, what is the advice I'll give the government? Nothing, because they won't take my advice. So, secondly, no, we had so many issues at that time. We had to just work it out. But I think under President Jayawardena and President Premadasa, even in 2001, when we were dealing with bankruptcy and the peace talks, we had to keep many things going. In addition to ensuring you keep your majority in Parliament. So that's one this thing. But I was just thinking of the future. I want to suggest to looking at what Asia, Indian Ocean, is a part of geopolitics, geoeconomics. So why don't we get Advocata and the cartographer, geopolitical car together and do a study of what is evolving scenarios that will emerge as a result of the post-Washington consensus age.
While you said the government won't take any advice, it's in media rumors they are following your program.
That is true. Yeah, that is true.
Are they following the full program?
We'll leave that, I think, for you to decide. Thank you very much, President Wickremesinghe and Dr. Rajapathirana, for joining this very interesting, engaging conversation. And thank you very much for all of you to joining this conversation.